Welcome to our Claremont EcoForum Special for the Living Earth Eco Challenge finalists and our Living Earth Awards. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you to our student finalists for being here.
It's wonderful to see you all again, and it's truly a rewarding journey for me and for us at the Living Earth Co-Creatives. And we are still emerging, and there's still a lot to be co-created. And in all of you, our students, our mentors, our friends here co-creating together and towards an ecological civilization. And Augustine, hi. Tell us where you are now.
Hi everyone, I'm gonna be like a report of the weathercast in Hong Kong. Can you hear me well?
Yes, perfect.
So I'm so happy to see you today. I'm showing my screen where I am because as Elaine was sharing, we are innovating, right? So this means that we have to adapt. I have worked in sustainability the last 10 years of my life, or I believe it's even more now. And sometimes you need to do some stuff that allow you to keep going in the journey. And right now I work as a sustainable project manager in a tennis company, but I also have the blessing and the opportunity to teach small kids about tennis. So what I do is I try to bring this collective approach of, because of my thinking, everything has the opportunity to be sustainable. Everything has the chance to be taking this approach of sustainability.
For our friends who probably don't know yet about GYC, maybe you can tell us a little bit about what GYC is and how are you connected to the global climate leadership work?
The Global Youth Coalition, I am the founder chairperson of that organization. You asked me what Global Youth Coalition is. Global Youth Coalition is what you guys are doing right now: educating, empowering, understanding, breathing, and repeat. That's it. Global Youth Coalition is not the only organization. I believe that it's a way of living. Is when you understand that you don't want to keep doing life as everyone is doing out there, just focusing on money, just focusing on success. What does successful mean these days? You know, like everyone is like, most of the youth is always looking at all these YouTubers, all these individuals. Oh, we want to have more, we want to accumulate more, we want to be the person. So GYC is actually, we began in Egypt in COP27, the Conference of Parties, where all the global leaders unite each year to discuss and make decisions that will affect all of us globally, because the United Nations is somehow the entity that guides the way that we behave and the government behave. Of course, there's individuals, there's some so-called global leaders that they don't want to listen, and they want to keep with the same mentality of I, and I. Is everything about myself? Is everything about my country? Is everything about my people? But whatsoever you do in California, let me tell you that for sure will affect someone in Egypt, for sure will affect someone in Brazil. So that's about global youth coalition, is when we understand that we are all one. And that's the very phrase that I started the organization with. We are one. We are one community. We're one species. That's humans. Homo sapiens sapiens. There's no here borders. There all those social concepts, social constructs that we kind of inherit from our previous generations, and we cannot blame them because they were also discovering the planet. But we discover it, and now what? We need to consume all of it. That's why our ancestors walked kilometers and kilometers to discover all the mountains, all the oceans, and all these beautiful small things that people went deep in the jungle to understand what is poisonous, what is not. And what are we doing now? We are just accumulating and sitting our asses and asking Amazon for food because we cannot go to the market anymore. And what happens if the market closes tomorrow? Do you know how to plant a seed? Do you know how to be sustainable? Don't depend on the system. Also, sometimes we want to propose a complete new system. What if we improve the system that we have now? And that's what GYC is, Ling. We train people all over the planet with the Global Youth Climate Training together with Oxford University. We attend, we support, we go to the global conferences, and then I do exactly the same thing as I'm sharing with you now. We speak, we talk, but moreover, we try to make more silence and do more actions. I think that will be from my side. Sometimes we limit our mindsets and we believe that sustainability or environmental caring is just enjoying and taking care of this beauty, things that we have in front of us, this beauty living, things that we have the opportunity to feel and perceive. Because if you realize and you observe how the sunlight is coming and is reflecting in the leaf, you see how it's shining, and this is creating the process. Oh, we even can see some drops there, so you can see the process of photosynthesis, one of the deeper process that you can realize. And you will say, so I connect myself to hear this guy calling from Hong Kong to tell me something that I know, photosynthesis, so basic. Yes, water is coming, the light is coming, and then you are transforming to oxygen that we are breathing. But it's not that easy if you consider that photons are coming straight forward the plants, they go on, and because they have this energy, and they find the water, and in the water, the electrolysis, the electron goes and attach with the electron of hydrogen, and they detach from the water, and then you have O2, that is oxygen. And that's so easy to say, but have you at some point realized how complex it is, how complex does that process, that from what we have here, earth, you see, from earth, from water, those elements, and you feel like a magician, no? Like you have air, you have water, you have light, and then bang, you have organic matter. Organic matter is this, organic matter is that, and guess what? You are also organic matter. So it's important because my role today is to inspire you to keep going on what you are doing, and just have fun, guys. The fact that you are already conscious of nature is already the blessing that you have to be proud of. I'm impressed with you all. I'm so happy because I was seeing the videos that you are guys taking, and maybe if I change here, look, there's individuals here that some of them, they don't really realize what nature is. Some of them, they don't have the chance to really appreciate that even in this beautiful small thing, that you touch them and they are open. Look, these ones are closed because they are just still sleeping. And when you appreciate these little things, you have the chance, as I did, to travel all over the planet. Because something that you need to realize, if you dedicate your life to take care of the planet, to take care of nature, there's no limits for nature. Nature has no borders. It's not about being from the American continent, from the Asian continent. Nature is everywhere. And have you at some point realized, does nature finish where the planet, like, does nature finish with the planet? Or what about the universe? Is the universe nature as well? Once I was asking myself this question, and I was meditating, and then I end up not having the answer myself. So I asked ChatGPT, and you can ask your AI also, if you're using it consciously, what's the limits of nature? And the AI will tell you that limits of nature is actually, nature is equal the universe, because everything is nature. Nature is not only the living things. Nature is also those inorganic matter, because everything happens and everything is connected.
Thank you. Thank you, Augustine. You know, what's really special is that usually you will be giving a talk about how do young people engage in the global big leaderships and going to COP and all those conferences. And I think a lot of young people today are really like interested in engage in that level. But I really love how you started by looking at photosynthesis, looking at how living Earth works, and that the very mechanism that is happening around, but also within us. And this is how we are a photosynthesis being as well. This is how we are as organic matter. So big from the universe and down from our inner growth. And so that's the span, and there's no limit to nature. So thank you so much. Thank you so much, Augustine.
We are now going to have our student presentations. First, we will have BingBing presenting, and then Lucy, Sophie, then Jack, then Ryan. And we're just going to be going back to back, and we'll have a chance to share reflections later on in our gathering. So, BingBing, go ahead and share your screen. There we go. That's it. Looks good.
Today, I will share with you about the hidden environmental impact of our food choices. My eco project was guided by this inquiry. How can we transform food systems to reduce the environmental impact while supporting healthy, culturally meaningful, and accessible diets for all? Before we begin, it's important to know that understanding this issue means going beyond surface facts to the deeper principles behind them. So we'll start with what we can see and gradually explore the underlying causes. First, a question. How often do you consider the environmental impact of your food choices when making meals or buying food? In my survey among the students in the LA area, only 39% of the environmental impact of their food choices. Then why does this matter? An article in website Nature points out that food production is responsible for over a quarter of global greenhouse gas emissions. Our food system is a major source of pollution, contributing to climate change, biodiversity loss, and resource depletion. Then where do all these environmental impacts come from? Data from Cago shows industrial red meat and dairy are among the highest impact foods. But the pollution comes not just from the animals, but also from growing their feed, which depletes land and water resources and uses heavy chemical fertilizers. As well, there's all the energy used in running meat factories and transporting the products. And in places like the Amazon forest, forests are being cleared to make room for grazing or growing more feed, causing serious environmental harm. Animal foods give us key nutrients like protein and iron, but factory farms also hurt the environment. So we can lower the environmental impact of our food choices by avoiding industrialized meat and dairy and supporting sustainable farming. Plant-based diets generally have a smaller carbon footprint and require less land and water compared to animal-based diets. However, they are not entirely without impact. Even plant-based farming can cause problems like soil damage and chemical pollution. So it's important to choose organic, locally grown foods. Then let's look at the science behind that. Modern farming feeds billions, but it's hard on the planet, causing over a quarter of global emissions, using half of our land and 70% of fresh water. It also pollutes rivers and hurts biodiversity. Livestock alone makes up 94% of all mammal biomass. But the good news is we do have solutions. Regenerative agriculture helps restore soil and fight climate change. In California, the Healthy Soils Program funds farmers to improve soil health. By investing in these systems, we create more sustainable food production. Countries like Rwanda are also adopting national plans, proving this model works on a large scale. It's not just farming, it's a climate solution. Sorry, I don't know why the photos are not here. We can also look back to move forward. Long ago, civilizations like Liangzhu farmed in harmony with nature, especially through rice farming. Regenerative farming brings together ancient wisdom and modern science to help the land and reduce pollution. Our food choices have environmental costs, greenhouse gases, water pollution, and land damage. But smarter choices can help. Avoiding industrialized meat and dairy, eating more plant-based food, and sourcing local foods all reduces emissions and pollution. Adopting programs like Rwana's circular food system that shows how rethinking food production can restore soil and cut waste. Real change also needs teamwork, policies, school programs, and students' action. So what can students do? Many of us already care and we're ready to lead. So first, speak up for better food policies that support regenerative farming. Second, choose more local and plant-based food. Third, help make composting and food waste programs part of our schools. Fourth, start hands-on projects like gardens or food sharing. And fifth, spread the word. Show others how our food choices impact the planet. Change starts with us. As students, we can start by taking local action. This can motivate others to create a global impact to help the environment through our food choices. And by designing promotional posters and presentations for schools, I want to help students learn more about the environmental impact of our food choices. Through clear visuals and relatable facts, I aim to make sustainability feel accessible and actionable for everyone. These small actions add up when more of us get involved. By using our power wisely, we can support food systems that protect the earth, connect emotionally to nature, and build a more caring world. Tonight, I challenge you to photograph your dinner plate and think about what sustainability tastes like to you. So share a story and invite others to join this food journey. And thank you so much for listening. I'm happy to chat more or answer any questions.
Wonderful, BingBing. Congratulations.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here today. I'm Lucy, and I'm really excited to take you on a journey through my music project called Echoes from the Earth, the soundtrack of awareness. This project combines two things I deeply care about, music and nature. And it's not just a piece of music, it's a message about listening more carefully to the world around us, not just melodies and rhythms, but to the actual sounds of the environment. Sounds that are disappearing as we continue to ignore the damage being done to the planets. And through this project, I try to answer a question. What happens when nature speaks and we turn it into music? And I hope today you will hear that answer. And this is my guiding inquiry. How can a theme song elevate environmental consciousness through its melodic resonance? So what exactly I'll be sharing with you today? So first I'll share you my soundtrack, and next I'll walk you through the structure and the style of my original composition, how I built the music, and what choices I made to reflect the emotions behind the message. And next I'll introduce the natural sound samples I use, from the bird in the trees to the insects buzzing in the background. And finally, I'll explain the meaning behind the music, why I made it and what I wanted to say, and how I hope it will inspire people to connect more deeply with the natural world. So I'll first share my soundtrack. And next, let's start with the structure. Here you can see a screenshot of my music production software, GarageBand, and this is where all the magic happens. I use multiple audio layers, mixing both natural sounds and the digital instruments to build a textured soundscape. The piece has a clear rhythm and beat, but also intentional pauses, moments of silence that reflect tension, almost like the nature holding its breath. These moments are powerful because they give the listener time to reflect. I'd also brought in rock elements like electric guitar effects and strong bass to add urgency. The contrast between soft bird's call and these sharp driving sounds represent the conflict between peaceful ecosystems and human disruption. I didn't want the music to be just beautiful and peaceful. I wanted to feel alive, emotional, and urgent, because that's what environmental issues are right now. And one of the most important sounds in my project came from a bird, the wild dove. This bird is common in many cities and towns, especially in Asia, and it has this soft echoing cooing sound. What struck me about is how this bird lives so close to human, often perching on buildings and telephone wires or rooftops. It has adapted so well to urban life that we barely notice it. But here's the interesting part. While this species is doing okay, other related species are in decline due to the habit loss and pollution, including its call in my sound was symbolic. It's like a reminder that the nature is right here with us, coexisting quietly, and we shouldn't take that for granted. In a way, the wild dove is a bridge between the urban and the natural, and it's to be annoying. But when I went out and recorded sounds in grass or trees, but their sounds were vivid and full of character. After doing some research, I identified two likely species behind the sounds. First, the tetigonide, or the bush crickets. Their chirping is made by rubbing their wings together. And next, the stepnopelmatide, whose calls are intense and rhythmic, with a unique sash and chunk pattern. So why go through all these efforts to turn the nature into music? Because I believe the sound can change the way we see things. We live in a noisy world and we often tune out the quiet voices of nature. But those voices does matter. They're telling us that the earth is changing and not always for the better. By putting natural sounds in a rocks-inspired composition, I want to create a contrast. I want to surprise the listener and grab their attention and say, hey, listen, that's where we're losing and it's beautiful. And this project is more than just a creative experiment. It's more than a form of activism, a way to raise awareness and invite others to care. My hope is that after hearing my song, people might walk through a park or sit outside and really just listen to the birds, the insects, and the breeze. Because the more we hear, the more we care. And the more we care, the more likely we are to act. Thank you.
Wonderful, Lucy. Thank you. Thank you so much. That was great, Lucy. All right, next up will be Sophie.
All right, thank you. Today I'm going to be talking about my project Pixels and Pollution, fighting microplastic pollution with deep learning AI and detecting lung inflammation. So my guiding inquiry was how can we address the growing ecological and public health risk of microplastic pollution through new technological innovation to initiate action. Let's start with a question to everyone here today. Who here thinks they have microplastics inside of them? That's a really hard question to answer, isn't it? Because we can't really feel or see it, at least not yet. Microplastics are found everywhere in the world, and they've permeated the globe. The prominent culprits of microplastic pollution now are mainly come from synthetic fibers, vehicle tires, city-urban dust, and road markings and others. They break off from natural weathering and wear and then enter our environment through road runoff, water, and wind. Now in this age, children have become the most at-risk population for health complications because of microplastics, which is a very growing concern. Here is a graphic illustrating the inhalation of microplastics over a year to a lifetime in the life of a human. Within a year, humans inhale over the height of 2 giraffes worth of microplastics. In their lifetime, at least the height of the Eiffel Tower and up to the height of Snowdown Mountain. That is crazy. It also has very adverse impacts to the environment. Microplastics has accumulated in organisms and through either ingestion or absorption, which then bioaccumulates through the food chain through different predators as they eat, making it more and more concentrated. It harms the development of animals, including their reproductive and digestive abilities, and releases toxic chemicals into the environment. I propose 4 steps to address this issue. The first one is to identify the harm using my AI model, Lungi. Lungi is a CNN-based model that is taught to recognize inflammation in lung tissue, specifically the kind that is caused by breathing in microplastics. It scans images and classifies them as a part of one of 3 groups, either normal lung tissue, common inflammation, or microplastic-induced inflammation. It uses an AI architecture that is able to recognize the patterns in these images, which is taught on real lung tissue samples. Here is an excerpt over here of my pseudocode, along with a picture of a lung tissue sample. To break down how I built this model, I started by first taking a variety of different data sources of lung tissue, including both human and animal. I then loaded that into my program and then pre-processed by using image augmentation to make all the images uniform. I then defined the model architecture and compiled the model, training it on the data, which is then I evaluated it for accuracy. I added 2 optionals of either biomarker identification or GradCam to be able to highlight the specific areas of inflammation. After I've built my model, the next step is to raise awareness. The problem with the microplastic issue is that it's nearly impossible to see in our everyday lives, which makes real efforts to care about the issue difficult. But by bringing forth the invisible harm that microplastic exposure has been wreaking on our communities and on our individuals, the results of Lungi will be a powerful tool in raising public awareness as a catalyst of change. We can take steps on both the local and global scale. Locally, we can hand out flyers to raise awareness, use announcements at our school, along with community-led initiatives and events. We can also globally start social media campaigns to reach a wide and diverse audience to raise global awareness. Here I have a poster flyer example. Some simple actions you can take today are starting by avoiding single-use plastics. You can also limit your consumption of seafood, which often has high accumulation of microplastics in them, along with washing your clothes on cold water or letting them dry naturally to prevent the speed up of the breaking of microplastics. Purchasing clothing from natural fibers, along with avoiding heating food in plastic containers, are all simple ways you can take in your everyday life to prevent your increased exposure to microplastics and protect yourself and the environment. Next step is to advocate for policy change. In order to advocate for policy change, we need to have a strategy that can engage policymakers and the public that combines both short-term and long-term policy to work together interconnectedly. Short-term, we can offer tax incentives and fines to encourage businesses to switch to more sustainable alternatives. We can also use public health warnings and labelings so that individuals can make more informed choices when they purchase, knowing the risks that come with microplastics. Long-term, our goal is to completely move away from plastics for a truly sustainable society by investing in research into better solutions, such as I know there are a couple like seaweed plastics, along with those made from the fermentation of different bacteria that are biodegradable. Some actions that we can take are like starting petitions to rally support and to bring attention to policymakers and politicians to understand that this is an issue that is pressing to our community that we care about. Lastly, we want to encourage engagement. The key to maintaining an effort is through community commitment. The microplastic issue isn't one that can be solved overnight, so it needs both the individual, the community, and the world to be able to come together for a continuous fight. By highlighting how microplastics infiltrate food chains, pollute water supplies, and affect respiratory health, we can encourage a collective responsibility to reduce plastic usage and battle for a cleaner, healthier environment. I want to also talk about the importance of action. Too often, people think of us and the environment as separate, but in truth, we are far more interconnected. And when the world suffers, we suffer. And when the world thrives, we thrive. Microplastics have infiltrated almost every ecosystem. They've harming wildlife and humans, but their impact is still largely unseen and the full extent of the problem is still unfolding. Our purchasing decisions, lifestyles, and policies we promote and influence happen in the world around us without us even realizing it. As stewards of the earth, we can create a new future on this planet that will serve the good of all life, not just human life, but non-human life as well. In conclusion, addressing the microplastic problem brings us to think about the interconnectedness of life and the balance that sustains our ecosystems. By using tools like LUNGI, allow us to study the impact of these pollutants on human health and see how they extend to the broader web of life. This knowledge reminds us about the importance of the health of the planet and its inhabitants, the intrinsic value of life, and the impact of every decision we make, how it affects not only the present, but also hundreds and thousands of species of life now and generations yet to come. Microplastic pollution challenges us to move beyond a temporary fix and to embrace a truly sustainable living. By taking the lead today, we can help create a world where we all can thrive. Thank you.
All right. Congratulations, Sophie. That was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing your presentation. And Jack, you will be up next.
Hello, this is my presentation on the impacts of light pollution on bird rest and flight behavior. This matters because birds are important to the ecosystem. Artificial light is upcoming and harmful to migratory birds. It disrupts sleep, alters behavior, and affects navigation. And by studying bird migration routes and light levels, we can uncover hidden causes. This project merges local data with global action, wildlife protection. Our inquiry is how can we reduce light pollution to protect bird life and promote a deeper harmony between human society and natural ecosystems, both locally and globally. And the question I'm going to research is, does light pollution impact the restoration of light behavior migratory birds? This project background is that I analyzed the bird GPS data, nighttime sky brightness. Restoration, low speed or zero speed, is used for approximate for sleep. Light speed is calculated from nearby GPS locations. I matched bird positions with nearby light pollution data and removed unrealistic values and made sure to make it correct for different time zones on the Earth. The method, I got these two data sets from Kaggle, and the birds we'll be using are lesser black-backed gulls named Eric, Nico, and San. On the image on the left, it shows there's the 3 gull migration routes from between Africa and Europe. And on the right, it shows the 3 individual routes with their names on the top. This graph shows that more light pollution corresponds with lower restoration. And this graph shows that more light pollution corresponds with more average flight speed towards the right of the graph. What we've discovered, this shows that higher light levels correlate with shorter restorations and increased average flight speed. Therefore, we have concluded that light pollution negatively impacts bird behavior. This suggests physiological or behavioral stress. Light pollution disrupts bird ability to rest, and constant exposure to artificial light might increase stress to migrate faster. The call to action. Number 1, use fully shielded outdoor lighting fixtures. That means you can use lights that is shielded like outside the sky. Number 2, implement motion sensors and timers. This uses electricity less and uses light less as well. Number 3, use warm colored LED lights. Blue light, which is not warm colored, can disrupt bird behavior even more. Number 4, reduce overlighting. Number 5, establish dark sky audiences. Number 6, promote awareness and education. You can teach others to be aware of the sky light pollution and how it affects birds. Number 7, designate and protect dark sky reserves. This means that you can protect dark sky areas. And number 8, encourage smart city lighting. That means you can use the smart lights in heavy populated areas like cities. In conclusion, light pollution negatively affects bird rest and behavior, and simple changes can help both wildlife and people. This evidence shows for urgent need for light pollution reduction. In the future, I might measure other key variables like long-term behavior with other environmental factors, and also I might incorporate data on weather patterns, land use, or habitat availability. The criteria shows that local lighting changes can protect migratory species globally. Like these strategies I discussed, it can be very powerful to protect birds. And also we have the ability as humans to realign urban design with wildlife patterns. And this project overall connects ecology, technology, and behavior. Type diversity, this shows that it honors ancient bird life cycles and informs future policy. And this presentation supports a web of life perspective and more than human ethics. Thank you so much for looking at this presentation.
Congratulations, Jack. Wonderful. Okay, Ryan, take it away.
Hello, my name is Ryan Lowe, and as the Beatles once said, here comes the sun and it's all right. But is it really all right? The sun, as in the greenhouse effect facilitated by the sun, the rising temperatures from this human-induced extreme global warming effect, and the many direct consequences of global warming, including climate change, habitat destruction, and ocean acidification. Sorry for the sort of corny pun, but these are the sort of questions that we aim to answer in this analysis of the capacity and technologies of offshore wind, connected by policy through the guiding inquiry of what are the potentials of offshore wind and what location optimization policies can accelerate the development of offshore wind whilst balancing environmental and economic concerns. You might be thinking, how does offshore wind relate to global warming? Well, just to give some context, the UN cites that around 90% of our carbon emissions come from fossil fuel sources, a majority of which come from energy sources, so fossil fuels used as energy. And a way to sort of mitigate that is relying on cleaner sources of energy like offshore wind. Offshore wind is a complete new frontier in clean energy based on its location offshore from the coast, where the wind speeds are more reliable, allowing for the sort of energy to be more efficient. There are two different types of offshore wind that being fixed, as depicted right here, which is suitable around 50-meter depth in the ocean, and floating, which is suitable between 50 to 1,000 meters. And offshore wind completely blows the competition out of the water. Sorry for the pun, but that's ironic because this sort of project relied on the blow plan. First, B broke down the potentials of offshore wind and ways for optimization, how to optimize offshore wind. Then we L launched initiatives, policies to actually implement offshore wind in real life, and O, outreach, because people are really what allows something to go forward, allows policies to actually be passed. You might be wondering, where is W? Well, W is silent, because we can't keep silent while global warming is rampant. And the blow plant isn't just some sort of gust of wind. It's the wind to support the flight of specific companies, specific governments, and actually implement offshore wind through this sort of like report. This is acting as like a basis or report for these companies slash government. In part B, we first broke down the potentials of offshore wind to get that time diversity, because if you can't really long-term sustainably implement offshore wind, it isn't really feasible in real life. So what this project did was that it relied on a case study done by NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, on a hypothetical offshore wind plant in 2035. And from this sort of case study, we were able to get the CapEx or the maintenance slash expenses for offshore wind, the LCOE or the lifetime cost per megawatt hour. And from that, we were able to get a sort of break-even time, assuming that the lifetime cost per megawatt hour was the sale price, which isn't really how it works in real life, but just gives that general metric because of how complicated the energy market is. Getting the metrics of 24.91 years for floating offshore wind and 17.7 years for fixed offshore wind. And this goes to show that it has that time diversity, long-term sustainability. After that, in furthering this analysis, this project looked at the location, because location really determines both the economic effect and both the environmental effect in implementing offshore wind. So this sort of location analysis relied on a software called QGIS, which used GIS data, which is sort of data linked to specific locations. And what this sort of model wanted to do was consider both the wind speed. So the wind speed would basically consider the efficiency of the energy output, just to give that general metric. Also the environmental hotspots from NOAA. So both that also considers the environmental impact, the shore depth to consider both floating and fixed to get the model as shown. And this really is sort of that holistic development, balancing both the environmental and the economic concerns. The blue circle right there is just a general recommendation for fixed offshore wind, and the green is a general recommendation for floating offshore wind. And just to give those two metrics of both floating and fixed is more economically sustainable, and floating offshore wind is more environmentally sustainable. So that sort of gives that integrated perspective when looking at how to implement offshore wind. Secondly, in L, actually launching initiatives. This project focused on a recent goal at the time of Biden's goal to implement 30 gigawatts of fixed offshore wind and 15 gigawatts of floating offshore wind. And from that NREL data, the number of turbines to actually reach this goal was considered. But besides like just reaching a certain goal, in implementing offshore wind, you need certain policies to actually get this in the running. This picture over here, it projects the UK's Horsey 1, one of their most successful offshore wind plants, powering over 1 million UK homes with clean energy. And this sort of looking at not just the US, but also Europe, also global, is a way to sort of make sure that we can be, as the US specifically, can be as successful as possible in implementing offshore wind. So a key measure that UK did was have contracts for differences in implementing Horsey 1, which is basically guaranteeing a fixed price for energy at the start to actually make it economically sustainable when implementing offshore wind. A second part of like a policy that in this sort of report would be also expanding on environmental impact statements. Environmental impact statements are required in the US according to NEPA as of now, but there are lots of metrics that can be further expanded on. For instance, we can look at that time diversity aspect of bird migration. So how does this offshore wind plant affect bird migrations? We can also look at the cultural impact of how these offshore wind plants affect the cultural impact, cultural landscape of the people living around these plants, just to give that sort of life-centered approach. In addition to having those policies, we want this project focused on having specific measures of outreach, because yes, you can have these specific policies to motivate offshore wind, but what really facilitates these policies are people who elect certain policymakers or petitions for certain policies. So the sort of education measure that this project really focused on was through games. In our current pop culture, humor, entertainment is really what facilitates information. Looking at like the popular social media apps like TikTok, Instagram, humor, entertainment are really what facilitates, especially for the younger generation. So looking at that to give sort of that integrated perspective, differing from sort of the norm, this project's visual was to develop this game called Green Knights, the environmental game. This game was developed using C# under the Unity game engine. And the real goal of this game was giving the audience or the player the actual impacts of global warming, having them actually like in the game, experience these effects of habitat destruction, global climate change, ocean acidification, and having the actual player have a real world impact through this sort of fun environment, sort of fun beach cleanup game. And after this sort of beach cleanup game, the player learned a lot about the energy and how clean energy can subsidize fossil fuel energies, how using energy at specific times of the day is better for the environment, and so on. And that sort of education measures what people can really relate to in our current modern pop culture. And with that, I also had like participants actually play this game, and after playing this game, these players felt more environmentally kind, just to give that sort of metric for this game. And with that, this project just serves as that sort of report and evaluating offshore wind, finding better ways to implement offshore wind through policies, and actually facilitating these policies through education, so that we can ensure that the world is not just, quote, all right, as said by the Beatles, but absolutely amazing. Thank you.
Okay, so if anybody has a question or a reflection for our student finalists, we can take those now. Well, we've got a few questions for you all. As participants in the Living Earth Eco Innovation Challenge, how is this experience different than other competitions that you might have been a part of, or other courses that you might have been a part of before?
This experience was really rewarding, I think, and it was really fun to be able to work with a lot of people from across the globe. So we got a lot of different diverse perspectives. Like a lot of programs I know are just like based in the US, but here we also got to see a lot of different people from other countries too, like China. That was really amazing.
Wonderful, Sophie. Thank you.
I think what made this program stand out was the collaborative aspect. The student participants themselves comments on other participants, give feedback. I think that was very rewarding, because it's not often that you can get feedback for something that you did.
For me, I think the difference is I can listen to other students from other part of the world. The conversation is more globally, that I can hear like more knowledge upon other part of the world. Yeah.
Sorry, I don't really know how to find a hand emoji. Yeah, for me, it's a really good experience to practice my English, especially for present something. So also like environmental science part together with the presentation makes me feel like I have learned more or like go deeper for this part. It's really like a good experience.
Wonderful. Thanks, BingBing. And Jack, what did you like about this program?
I like how I can share my love of birds and feel the entire world, and just meeting new people and practice talking and presenting.
Excellent. Thanks, Jack. Okay, so we have some questions for you.
I just had a quick question for BingBing. I was wondering if through the course of this study, if she has decided to grow her own food.
Well, like not really, but I plan to do that because like like I'm a host family and my host parents, they love growing food by themselves in the backyard. They have food that's grown by themselves like vegetables, and it tastes really good. So I actually want to try. It's a really good idea.
Scott, would you like to come up and ask your question?
Lucy, what inspired you to create a music piece with nature sounds as a form of advocacy?
Actually, it's because Shindy and Lauren shared some broadcast on Spotify, which is also like an album created by a nature, but it's more like the actual sound of nature, but not as a form of theme song. And I also myself like to listen to many songs, and so I decided to create a song that combines the two things.
I think a really cool medium to connect with people, and also some really cool soundscapes we can pull from. So thank you.
And Scott, you had a question for Ryan.
I did. Ryan, thanks for a great presentation. Curious about any negative environmental impacts associated with offshore wind that you came across in your work.
Yeah, just like anything, there is some like positives and negatives. The one aspect of offshore wind that has an environmental impact is the transportation between the offshore wind turbine and the actual coast. So those transportation systems of the energy, it usually has to be like power lines that might go through the seabeds, and that is a specific thing that you do have to consider. The project does take into account through like that location optimization, considering those environmental impacts when recommending a place to put offshore wind, but there is a need to recognize that environmental impacts.
For sure. I think, no perfect solutions, but we got to look benefits when we're looking at that, and being able to supply clean energy would certainly be a big one. So thank you.
Thanks, Scott. Christopher, you had a question for Jack.
Yes, I thought that was a very interesting presentation. As you were speaking, I was wondering if the adverse lighting has increased over time, or it has in the past, was there less adverse lighting than there is today?
So yeah, there is, because there's a lot of more people and more cities are growing, so more lights appear and disrupts the ecosystems of birds.
And Christopher, you had a question for Sophie.
Yes, I thought that was a very significant observation. Sophie, when you started your presentation, you mentioned the separation people perceive between themselves and nature or the environment. But I was wondering, besides the specific problem of microplastics, are there larger implications for this perceived separation? Because I think what you said is that it's an illusion, or it's not really true, is it?
Yeah, I think it's a mindset that people have right now, that we are separate from the environment, and that what happens to it doesn't happen to us. It may be because of how we physically perceive ourselves and like our cities to be different from the forests, which are far away, but it does have a lot of negative impacts when we stop seeing the consequences of our actions, and it just makes the environment a lot easier to exploit, which is really bad.
I wanted to speak to Ryan's presentation because it reminded me when I flew into Amsterdam, it must have been 10 years ago or more. But as you're approaching the land, there's a whole string of offshore wind turbines. And it lasted for a long time. It must have been 10 or 15 minutes, this whole row of wind turbines. So that made me wonder if Europe is ahead of the United States in implementing offshore wind turbines, more advanced in this technology. And it also made me wonder if California poses a different kind of problem because the continental shelf, it reaches deep water very fast.
Yeah, so basically, I would say Europe is more advanced in the offshore wind aspect because they have more established offshore wind plants, like the UK's 4C1, in addition to a lot of the other ones. Regarding like implementing offshore wind in California, to account for like those thin continental shifts, you can implement floating offshore wind just to consider like that specific case, I would say.
Thank you. Patricia, did you want to share?
First, I really wanted to congratulate you. I mean, it's so diverse and so deep, and so you were so prepared. So congratulations to all of you. I love being here, although it's very late. And I was very curious to hear about the impulse of how to choose the theme. I mean, some already said a little bit about that, but what was the key for you to define and search for that specific theme?
I can just start off. I've always been interested in the energy market and energy in general. One time I looked at my electricity bill and it was like super complicated. I was like, whoa, I just want to learn more, understand what makes up all this complicated stuff. And then I did some previous work on solar panels and I expanded what I did, specifically in offshore when I did do a little bit of this project beforehand, but I just expanded on it. That's what prompted me because I both already was well versed in it and I also wanted to know more.
Thanks, Ryan. Anybody else want to share what inspired you to work on your project? Sophie, go ahead.
My inspiration came from a New York Times article actually that I read on the microplastics and how there was just this new evidence coming out of how microplastics are being found within the body and even within like unborn children, which really opened my eyes to the issue. That led me to do more research into the topic and then to build the projects that I have today.
Excellent, Sophie.
And Lauren, just throwing another one, if they want to choose or answer both. Who are they now after searching? Like, are they a different person? In what way?
How have you transformed from doing this project?
Actually, before this project, I think like the person have just a little interest to hiking or getting into the nature. But for this project, I record the natural sounds by myself and I recorded when I hike with my classmates. So I think this project made me have more a willingness to get into the nature and just listen to the breeze and the insects.
Thanks, Lucy. BingBing, you want to share anything about what inspired you for your project or how you've grown and changed because of doing the project?
Yes, so because of doing this project, I just like get deeper and deeper in environmental science in this part and just like realize how important for us to take a little step or just start with myself to change the environment, make a better earth for everyone. Yeah.
Thanks, BingBing. Thank you, Patricia. Ivy, you had a question.
So first of all, congratulations, everyone. We were together last week and just within a week's time, I see how you have improved yourself, becoming more confident, own your project more. So that's really, really good to see. I do have a question, may or may not be directly related to your project, but I'm very curious. I know many of you come from environmental science pathway to this project, but I was wondering, what do you do to develop or build closer or deeper connection with your subject? For example, bird, right? Wind. I think even plastics, we can develop a relationship with it because all of them, they are speaking to us and they play a role in our research, in our project. So it's not just us researching on it as some external things. Yeah, so I was wondering, what do you do to build a relationship with what you study? And I assume, that's also what you are passionate about. Yeah.
I can just say a little bit about that. So in regards to how do you get more knowledge about the topic of your interest, I think one aspect of me is science research. Through science research, I was able to expand my knowledge of both solar energy and both wind energy. So I think just surround yourself in an environment where you can constantly be exposed to your topic of interest, whether it be reading specific news articles about energy. I just always like to immerse myself in that because it really interests me personally.
Can I just add on one thing for Ryan? I think Ivy's question is also an invitation for you to perhaps to think further. How can you build relationship with what you are studying? And I think this question was very refreshing because what are you really studying? Are you studying offshore wind or energy in general, or the power of wind? Or, like as an elements of the wind or energy market. And there's several things that touched upon in your study. Also the rock and roll music, cultural references about solar, about wind. And there's so many aspects to it.
BingBing, did you want to share
So first, I moved here like 2023, so my English is not that good on the class. So in school, I almost just like self-study all my classes. And this program is also like another subject for self-study at the beginning. But when I went further, like deeper, and I feel like how interesting it is, the further I went, the more I want to know. So just like take a deep thought for what can we do or what's like what should we do.
Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Xinling to introduce our eco mentors. Which one of them is Ivy?
Thank you, Lauren. As earlier, we were just sharing this whole project is a pilot experiment that we want to create an intergenerational learning container at programs that we could learn from each other. And as we go along this program, we have come around many mentors who on the way helped both Lauren and I creating these projects, but also helping with the students and giving feedbacks. I will have Mingyan and Ivy to briefly introduce themselves.
Okay, good morning and good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to meet every participant and our friends from around the world. So my name is Ming Yang. I'm currently based in Hangzhou, China. Xinling and I and Lauren. So we met last year at the Claremont EcoForum, and we thought young people are such an important role in this era of EcoCiv, and they have their own way to express their understanding of the EcoCiv and also to take action. So this Eco Challenge is a little initiative after we got inspired at the forum last year. So very happy to meet everybody here.
Everyone, my name is Ivy, and thank you, Xingling, for inviting me to this challenge. So Scott and I, we are from the same organization, Inspire Citizens. And sometimes I say to people, my colleagues, they're very dedicated to inspire responsible, sustainable, compassionate global citizens, while my job is more to inspire Earth citizens. But I think they're very interrelated. I think as a human being, we of course have this strong human identity. Yet there is more for us to discover our eco-self, our ecological being, and why that really matters. Developing and discovering my own eco-self has really, really liberated my sense of who I am into that spacious consciousness of the whole web of life. And what it has been doing to me is making me much healthier, happier, and also be more in service of the world, of all beings. And I know in our time, the students and educators, they're experiencing lots of stress and burnout, very much like what our Earth is experiencing, being extracted over and over and into exhaustion. So my hope is really through education, through multiple sensory kind of learning and experience to wake up, to activate that larger ecological being in all of us, so we can see us and see all beings around us in new eyes and feel that deep felt connection and love and care. Yeah.
Thank you. Truly, like what David O says, we need lovers of all kinds and healers and inspiring global citizens, and we're all interconnected. And my question, the same question that we asked the students, and will be the question for you, because we were creating this container for the wisdoms to flow both ways, how an elders see, learn from the participants, like you are all young, but in this circle with the students, and we are kind of the elders here. And so I want to ask you, Ivy and Mingyang, what have you learned from this process? And especially what have you learned from engaging with the students?
I feel that all the participants actually brings different perspectives, disciplines, aspects, and also their way of living into this circle. So because at the very beginning, this whole eco challenge was only designed out of a concept and a belief, and it's very conceptual. But with all these kinds of contents, and all the different kinds of topics, which also come out of every participant's their understanding, their observation, and their belief and their interest of their life. So we kind of together we are weaving a web, and this life of web, and we are like manifesting what is happening on Earth and what is happening that every people can pay attention or be a participant or be an advocate, so we can be part of it. So as the initiator, we build the skeleton, but for all the people that join this challenge, join this circle, they are actually building up the fresh part of it, so which is really inspiring. And as I listen to the presentation, because this is the twice that I listen to all the participants' presentation, I make a wish that all your presentation and concept can turn into actions, which will actually make each of you be a very unique person that carry a kind of value proposition or kind of your mission and vision around your fellow students and in school, in your community, that your everyday thought and action can inspire others. And also what you are learning in school really makes sense. It's not only knowledge, only facts that you need to remember, or only boring tasks. All the things that you are learning can turn into the sources for you to take really proactive actions and meaningful actions. So I really looking forward to all the projects evolve and grow as time goes on, and probably from this year to next year and to next year. And each person, they can rediscover themselves along this way and also help others to rediscover themselves, and also through this process to discover the world through this their own topic or through their own media. Okay.
Thank you.
From my side, working with students is always a humbling experience, and that's why I love working with them. The way they see the world, their diverse approaches, their unique ways of being. It's always a humbling experience and good reminder about diversity, and we are different. Yet we are different doesn't mean, we cannot connect. As an educator, I think we might have our own understanding of what is good learning, what learning needs to look like, be like, right? But, from the students' perspective, from their own place, they might not see it in that way. So it's always a co-dancing and adjusting to each other and realignment. But in order to do that, I need to really put myself aside and then open up to expand that container more and more and more, so different voices and nutriments can come in and something new can emerge. And I feel like, again, with this experience being part of the Council of Stewards in this challenge, I feel like listening to the students, all of you have showed me the mirror, and I see important questions I need to reflect on as an educator about education for ecological civilization. For example, what is the role of direct experience, right? And then how to really balance head, the heart, the hands. So from all of you, like you are speaking to me, all the hidden voices, I think it's way beyond your project itself, but deeper questions as a younger generation, your way of seeing the world and this earnest inquiry and your love and your hope for the world, for the future, and how they reflect back to me and to ask me these important questions. How should I move forward? And what is my work? And what is my approach? So thank you for being that clear, pure mirror to show these important things to me. A mirror can only do a great job when you stay pure. You all have a pure heart. And that's something I always appreciate and keep in my heart.
Thank you, Ivy. I want to quickly respond to that. Today is the International Children's Day. May we all become innocent and pure I also wanted to add that because for this whole program cycle, we work with many students. Not many students come to the finalist, but there are many students who have joined the program, and I have witnessed how they have learned. I've worked with them in their schools, in their classes, and we've done city walks. And one of the things I was touched and inspired by was how doing innovation or any sort of creation is not a straightforward thing. There's so many twists and turns, and then so many trials and errors. And just now you're seeing perfect presentation, but along the process, there's a lot of frustrations and a lot of questions, like a hiccup moment afterwards when we look back. And that was really special. And then as an innovator ourselves, reflecting that journey, it was also kind of make me feel at ease. We're all in this process together. It's not a straightforward work, and we're exploring and navigating along together. The sense of mutual learning and support. And then I think for me, that's really nourishing. Thank you. Thank you, Ivy and Mia. 介绍一下你自己. Tell us about yourself.
谢谢. Oh, I don't know enough Chinese to speak whole sentences. But I know I can say that Xinlin invited me to come to this forum. I was immediately impressed with each student's presentation, the professionalism and the poise and confidence that you all demonstrated. I'm very excited about this cross-cultural exchange between China and the United States. Well, I would like to say North America, because I want to include Canada too. It's North America and China. There's wonderful connections being made through the EcoForum and through ecological civilization. But just the brief time that I've been exposed to this project, the Living Earth Co-Creative, it gives me a lot of reassurance that there's a generation coming. The younger people are very intelligent and very aware of problems and the changes that need to be made as solutions to those problems, as responses to the problems. So thank you very much, Xinlin. 谢谢.
Christopher's Chinese name is Ma Xueyong. And you can guess which Yong is that. Yes, Ivy says a lifelong learner. Exactly. I met Chris last year at the Eco Forum, and we had a wonderful conversation. He's one of our presenters. And after that, I start having a conversation, and Chris says, I'm working on my second master degree. And 1 year later, I was checking in with him, and then he said he's on his third master degree and then about to start a second PhD program. I was like, wow. And then we're coming to his name, and originally I thought it was like Yong as courage or braveness. And then while listening to that story, and I said, no, that should be the other Yong, like what Ivy just said, the lifelong learner. So that's the spirit. I really salute you, 学勇. And I really want to like bring that and share that with our students as well. Learning never ends. And I also wanted to highlight that he's also an authors in creating this global eco-village movement. And then he wrote the working with Gaia Education in writing, developing this eco-village design curriculum, which many years ago, I have went through that training. It's fundamentally changed how I see the world as well, especially the worldview dimension, so that it has worldview dimension, ecological dimension, economic dimension. And I know now, Chris, you are developing your eco project. Share with us your eco project.
Oh, thank you, Xinlin. This is very exciting. Seeing such a talented group of students together and coming from an eco-village background, it makes me think, what would happen if they all lived in the same community together and each was working on their unique skill set, or even as Jack said, a research question. What if they all came together and had a chance to live in a community that was devoted to education for healing the earth and for changing how humans think, how humanity has gotten stuck in its own ways and now is creating all these terrible problems like microplastics and ambient light that is affecting nature's patterns. So I'm looking forward to it, especially the idea of making connections with China and the Ecological Civilization Project. I think, as time goes on, I think we're going to see more and more of that. So you what I've seen here is gives me confidence that it's moving in the right direction. There are people that are taking responsibility for the changes that need to happen and the change of direction that needs to happen for us to all live healthy and abundant lives on planet Earth. And in my own research now, that's why I was very interested in the presentation by Sophie when she said about the separation between humans and Earth. And that's my own research now. I'm getting to enter my second PhD program in August, and I want to explore that much further. What does it mean? There's not only not a separation, but what if we can become Gaia? Gaia is the name that was given to the planet Earth as a living being. So what if we can start acting, we're not separated from Gaia, but we are Gaia, not the role in nature, but as nature. These are the kind of ideas I want to explore in my research coming up.
Wow, amazing. And I think we just nailed our next year's theme. We are Gaia. And also, I like what you've proposed, Chris, that this factor that is usually missing in our education is the place-based angle, and that linking whatever we do with a particular place that we're living in and we're serving. And is that how you see as an ecological education could be moving forward? And then also, is this part of the projects that you are working on, like creating eco-village as a learning community?
That's exactly true, that people come together to create eco-villages for various reasons. But the reason that I would want to have my own eco-village is to have a school, an education center right as the center of the eco-village. So people come not to have social interactions, but to actually to learn, to have a concentrated center for learning. That's why I can imagine all the students that presented today. What would happen if they all lived together in the same community? This is a wonderful technology to be able to include even Lucy from Shanghai, our friend from Brazil. I want to keep moving in this direction. And I was very inspired by Ming Yang last May or last June. Ming Yang gave a live feed. I don't know, what was the technical name, where she actually toured a village in China, Petian village?
Yeah, yes.
Petian?
Yes.
And it seems so wonderful to me that a solution for the economics of that school would be to have an education center in the middle of it. A school, you could call it a school, but it's not a school for children. It's a school for Westerners, especially, but people from all over the world who could come to Pétienne and have these learning experience where we're developing this kind of research that was presented to us today by the students. And I think it would be easier to become Gaia in a place like Pétienne than it would in a city like Shanghai. So we could all get a school started there and all coming together to do this research that it's not even possible at the universities these days, that kind of an advanced kind of research, because the universities they're still living in the old paradigm. And so their idea is to create people for the job market. Employment is important, but there's another step to it, a further step. Meet the needs of and the challenges of the day, because there's really, as Sophie so distinctly pointed out, there's microplastics running through our system. It just makes me think change needs to happen sooner than later.
Yes, well, truly a Gaia-versity, perhaps. That's what we're working on. That's one of the dreams when we first started the project, is that we're dreaming to connect the eco communities around the world, and then having that community as a learning space, the classrooms. And then we're also combining with the help of technology. We can connect with mentors like you and from all around the world, and to have this engagement and learning experiences online, but then we will have to come offline to the eco villages, eco communities near us to do the practice and to really engage and to relate to the question that you're researching in. So that's the dream. And hopefully with Living Earth Co-Creatives and together with the projects that you're doing and Ivy and Scott, and together we'll see what is this emerging. So thank you so much, 学勇。
谢谢心灵。
谢谢。We're about to come to close for this year's Eco Innovation Challenge. We do want to encourage you to take further your inquiry and come back again in this New Year cycle, either to develop further, more expand or further into your current inquiry, or start with a different inquiries as you wish. And as we go along, and we're improving this together, and we are planning to create this cohort learning model that you all who come to the cycle this year, and you will be the mentor, one of the mentors for our new friends for the next year. So you will be guiding them in what's your experience and how you do research, and you will be a helping hand for them for the new rounds. And then also open call to all your friends and people that you think might be interested in joining, send them a note, and we will create a bigger project next year. So we're not doing this for any broad show, people come look at us, how great we are. No, we're doing this for you. We're doing this for people in this circle. We're growing this together. So it's an internal facing, growth nurturing oriented program that we're trying to create. So this is what we call a learning circle. So yes, thank you so much. I want to hand it back to Lauren.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing your project presentations. Thank you to our eco mentors for sharing your reflections and dialoguing with the students. We've been on quite a journey this evening, from the introduction of this Eco Challenge program to the students sharing their presentations, and for all of us reflecting on what we are learning from these projects and from one another, and how we can continue to grow from learning from nature, always learning from nature. So again, thank you everyone for joining and sharing your insights and inspiration. And congratulations to our 5 finalists of the Eco Innovation Challenge. All right, and we will see you all Friday afternoon.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Presentations.
Thank you.